Donald, I demand you stop cleaning up Washington, D.C. right now. If you end the homelessness and crime, everyone will know I could have easily done that in California. How am I supposed to run for president in 2028 if everyone knows I never do anything?
Gavin, I had to clean up D.C. It's like a third world country here.
How dare you, Donald? What you're doing is somehow homophobic and fascist.
Instead of wasting my time, why don't you fix those problems in California?
You know damn well if I did that, I'd have nothing to campaign on every 4 years.
Okay, then why don't you at least rebuild the Palisades then? It's been 8 months since the LA fires burned it down.
I would if I had the money.
Well, what happened to the money we gave you?
It's in my pocket right now and I don't have time to get it out.
Gavin, take the money we sent you out of your pocket and use it to rebuild the Palisades.
You know what? You're being unreasonable. Screw you!
Is everything all right, Gavin?
No, the president's making me look bad. I'm so upset right now I don't feel like fixing California for at least another 4 years.
I know what you mean, Gavin. I've been mayor of Los Angeles for 3 years and still don't feel like doing anything.
Oh my God, I think my fancy wine glasses were delivered. They were a bit expensive, but money hasn't been an issue since I got those fire recovery funds. What the hell is this? Oh, he's done it now. Are you seriously gonna run for a third term?
I think so, Gavin. Who knows, I may even run for a fourth term.
That's it, I'm running against you in 2028. I'm gonna pretend there's nothing wrong with California harder than I've ever pretended before.
2, 3, Somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him as Vostradamus.
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Straight ahead on That Kevin Show, Ed Kovalik on the battle for American energy and how to win the AI arms race. Danielle Alvarez with the inside scoop on the looming elections of 2025. And Andrew and Jae Huff bringing comedy the whole family can laugh at. Plus sketch comedy from Al Berry and Nick Peterson. And Mercy Me returns to the spotlight. And now from Times Square, where the potholes get filled with ideology instead of asphalt. At least they will under the absurdity of Mayor Zoran Mamdani. Here.
Grateful to have you with us, friends, and grateful to be living in America on a day that saw tragedy this week, on a day in which there is so much in our society that is longing out for attention and the need for sound thinking and sound policy. But to be in a land that has the freedoms that we have is something I am immensely grateful for and never want to take for granted. And I'm reminded of this a lot when I see things like the shooting this week in Minneapolis. You know, when you see a couple of children killed and 17 other people injured, it's important that we as a culture ask questions of ourselves. And we need to ask some uncomfortable questions of ourselves. Because typically what happens is the mainstream media, kind of informed by leftist, godless ideology, usually says in the aftermath of something like this that a cold piece of metal is the problem. That there is a cold piece of metal called a gun that created the problem. That it is a cold piece of metal that somehow did all the evil. And that's just not true. There is no cold piece of metal that acts on its own. There's no cold piece of metal that fires its own trigger. There's no cold piece of metal that can aim itself at a human being and take a life. So the questions we need to ask, if we really want to see this type of behavior stopped, is how can we go about creating a situation in which the actual agent that aims and pulls the trigger and makes the decision to kill and to injure? How can we create an incentive for that agent to behave differently? Because the cold piece of metal has almost nothing to do with it. After the school shooting in Florida those many years ago, I published a piece at townhall.com that today I think is still their most read piece ever. And it was simply titled, How to Stop School Shootings Overnight. Guaranteed to stop them overnight. I listed 5 things that could be done. I have seen that column replicated in people's comments and in people's ideas and in other things very many times since then. Tens of millions of people have read this column. But if you adopted all 5 things, you would end this completely. But I want to narrow in today on something that is, I think, even more important. And that is, what is the psychological profile of who performed that heinous act yesterday? And not surprisingly, we found out something about this individual. They were born as Robert, and they wanted to be known as Roberta. The school shooter in Nashville also identified as transgender. Now, I am not making a blanket statement that all transgender are violent and that they want to do harm to people, but I am willing to ask some uncomfortable questions. If you are in the process of transitioning, particularly for young people, and this person yesterday was 22 years old, the use of things like puberty blockers and cross-sex hormones and other chemical things that are done to change or attempt to change the cellular DNA of what is in your body and how God created you. Do we have enough evidence? Are we confident enough of these drugs that it does no harm to take what God created in nature and to force it into trying to become something else? Reviews of things called puberty blockers in adolescents have pointed to some significant concerns about just health, fertility, psychiatric effects, all in the context of this, have a very, very thin evidence base. In fact, the margin for really understanding how these drugs work is still at the inconclusive level in terms of clinical understanding. These drugs were developed for entirely different uses, and they remain experimental when applied to gender-questioning youth. So you may have a form of cancer or a blood disease of some sort or whatever that puberty may harm or intensify the effects of. Puberty blockers were designed to help the body stall when they need it to for a very specific set of reasons. They were not developed so that people who say, I'm born a man today, but I want to be a woman tomorrow, could suddenly feel better about themselves. It's not the purpose of why they were developed. Cross-sex hormones, large lifelong doses of testosterone and estrogen given to the opposite sex, have proven to be even more destabilizing. Reports link them to mood swings and aggression, mania, psychiatric breakdowns, particularly in those already struggling with mental illness. Now, friends, I don't know if you've paid attention on my show as we've talked about the journey of the detransitioners that have gone down this road, and they want to say, no, I don't really want to go down that road. I want to go back. And they're trying to come out of the transitioning process that they've been in. But almost to a person, and I've interviewed dozens of them, almost to a person, a detransitioner has been able to say, I needed psychiatric help, but I needed it to address these underlying issues that were already demonstrating themselves in my life. trouble from other areas of mental health that needed to be addressed directly, and not to be told, if I just change my gender, all of those things will go away. In fact, for none of the detransitioners that I have interviewed did gender transitioning solve any of the problems that they were already facing and still would face. None of them. It fixed nothing. So what the evidence shows is that if you take someone who has mental illness, which a lot of gender questioning youth are already struggling with on some level, and then you add cross-sex hormones to it, let me just read the list again. Mood swings, aggression, mania, psychiatric breakdowns are all intensified with people that are already struggling with these things. There is a better way, there is a higher way, and I believe that we need to pursue that at every level. Kevin McCullough coming right back.
Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's That Kevin Show. Everything you need at thatkevinshow.com. Appreciate you checking that out. I am always on offense when it comes in this day and age to the idea of energy and what we need to be doing in terms of energy policy and in terms of enacting a pro-energy agenda for our life. Partly because I know that it's how we survive and thrive here in America. But as I've gotten to know the good people at Prairie Operating Group, and as we have worked on this project called oilfacts.com for the last couple of years, it has been mind-blowing to me to see all of the other ramifications of having a pro-energy mindset versus one of energy poverty, energy scarcity, energy rationing. And you may not think you actually know anybody that thinks that way, but there are public policy leaders that very much think this way and very much want to see such rationing go into effect. That's one of the reasons why the Green New Deal was pushed so hard by certain political forces within our culture. Here to discuss is Ed Kovalik, who's the CEO of Prairie Operating Company, a publicly traded pro-American energy supplier. And Ed is no stranger to our show. Ed, welcome back. It's good to see you.
Hey, Kevin. Man, it's great to be here with you today again.
Let's talk about what I just opened with. Because we always talk about all of the untold stories about oil and gas and the good that it's done. But there is actually an agenda to try to undermine the good that it does, and in actuality, the freedom that it gives people. Talk to me a little bit about how policies and public policy, and specifically in recent years, has been a tool of manipulation that some are trying to use.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I know it's one that a lot of folks grapple with. Let's start with the idea that energy abundance, meaning having abundant and affordable access to energy, is key both to prosperity and human flourishing. And if you accept that as key, then it's important to kind of take a step back and understand, what does our energy system look like? And we can talk about the United States, for example. In the United States today, we have a fairly outdated grid for transmission of electricity. That grid has an average life dating back to the 1970s. Some of it's older, some of it's newer, but it's about as ancient as I am. And so it has its limits in terms of transmissibility. And in terms of generation of electricity on that grid, that also has its limits. About 60% of generation is fueled by fossil fuels, about 20% is fueled by nuclear, and about 20% is fueled by everything else, being solar, wind, hydropower, biomass, and so forth. And so those numbers aren't really changing in terms of contribution of electricity to that grid. Now, What is changing is demand for electricity on the grid. Not only is demand for energy going up every year, and with that, demand for fossil fuels, but also, we're reading a lot about AI and the demand that data centers are creating for energy. That demand is really, really huge compared to anything we've seen in our lifetimes. So it's projected that demand from data centers on the grid is going to double between now and 2030. Let me say that again, double in just the next 5 years.
Wow.
And so with energy scarcity being electricity generation on that grid, and demand kind of going to sky high levels, by definition, there's going to be scarcity of electricity. So with that said, it's really mind-boggling, going back to your question, why would politicians be proponents of creating more dependency amongst Americans on electricity through electric cars, electric stoves, getting away from fossil fuel internal combustion engine vehicles, getting away from gas stoves? Why would they do that at a time when we have scarcity? Well, the only logical answer is so that government can ration electricity. And if you think about scarcity, the scarcity model, different folks, different people that want electricity on the grid, being data centers, or you and I being average citizens, are going to be paying different rates for electricity, right? So if it's scarce by definition in any kind of system, it's going to be more expensive for everybody, and those that are willing to pay the price for greater access, being the tech titans that need it to fuel their AI data centers, they're going to be paying more. That's okay, they can afford it. But guess what? Everybody else is going to be paying more. And so it brings us back to sort of the economic environment that we live in, where we've lived through an era of higher inflation, where salaries haven't really kept up with cost of living. And so it's really tough for Americans these days to keep up, let alone pay more for electricity, which ultimately may lead to rationing, and the government telling, Ed and Kevin, hey guys, we love you, but you only have so much access a month on your meter.
It gives very much bread lines in the Soviet Union in the 1960s and 70s is what it sounds like, but it's with electricity. Ed Kovalik's my guest, Prairie Operating Group. He is the CEO of Prairie Operating Company, and they have been the primary driving force behind oilfacts.com, where I strongly encourage you not to just go and check it out, but to sign up for the report, 10 energy facts a patriot must know, and get that for free, and then continue to come back to that website, because there's more information going in there every day that you don't know about. The cleanest, most abundant supply of good old American energy that can be produced, and Prairie Operating Company is on the front edge of that. Ed, when we talk about what you just laid out, the ramifications are enormous, and data centers, you don't even have to convince anybody of that. If they open their phone, every app on their phone now has an AI option that can help you, quote unquote, with whatever you want to do. Every one of those is a different model. It's a different data center that's being, tapped into. And I don't know if it's just me or if it's anybody else, but the more I use AI related apps on my phone gets hotter. Like you can tell everything's just working a lot more when it's using this technology. And it's not that we can go away from the technology. China is going to pursue this bar none. They are going to use it for defense applications, their own economic applications. They're going to do what they do with very hostile motives about world takeover in terms of economic and dominance as best they can, with every advantage that AI will give them. So we have to not just keep up, we have to try to outthink and be on the front line of this.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. From New York, That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com. If you want anything related, if you would like to know more about what we're talking about in this section of the show, oilfacts.com. That's not FAX, by the way. It's facts, like facts that you want to know. Oilfacts.com, OILFACTS.com. Ed Kovalik is my special guest. Prairie Operating Company is what he heads up, and they produce domestic sources of energy right here. They mostly oil and gas, and they frack with the lightest footprint and fingerprint possible on the planet, and they're doing it in such an amazing way. I've written stories about it if you want to go into my archives, but Ed, it's always great to have you here. What difference does it make if we can't keep up with the AI grid? Just going to break, it seems like China is way out in front of us. In fact, I read a report somewhere that they're launching a new coal plant every week for the entire year of 2025. What does that mean by way of competing with where we need to be?
Well, you're absolutely right, Kevin. I make no mistake, we're absolutely in an AI arms race with China. The stakes are really high. And, we're going to invest every dollar we can, and we're also going to hog up every electron of electricity generation we can to power these AI data centers to win that war. And so just to put it in the context, in my community here where I live, there are about 20 homes. We're part of kind of a larger community, maybe about 100 homes. And so the electricity that, my community uses in a year of about 100 homes is the same amount of electricity that one data center uses just to train one model once. And they do that every day. So the power consumption and power demand of these data centers cannot be overstated. Yet, we have this outdated grid, as I said earlier, that can, barely deliver the juice that we're currently drawing from it. Right. And so ultimately, it's going to mean that we're going to need a hell of a lot more power. Now, it's not going to come from solar and wind because they're incredibly inefficient sources of power. The sun only shines so many hours in a day in the right places. The wind only blows so many hours a week in the right places.
It sometimes blows the blades off, too. Did you see that one that landed across the Maryland expressways a few weeks back?
Yeah, 100%. So they're not really, those are technologies that wouldn't exist in nature. And what I mean by that is without extreme government subsidization, we wouldn't have any solar or wind because they're not economic. And so ultimately, we need a lot of nuclear power. And I'm a big believer and proponent in nuclear. But let's face it, our country is mired in a regulatory quagmire that we're not going to dig ourselves out of. Even as great of a job as President Trump is doing in pushing forward that agenda, even with as great of a job as Chris Wright is doing in laying the groundwork for that agenda, I'm still a realist, and I believe it's going to take the better part of 20 years to kind of see the beginning of a transformation. Well, what are we going to do for the next 20 years to keep up? We're going to need a lot more infrastructure. We're also going to need a lot more of every kind of power. So this kind of idea that we're in an energy transition is just an abject lie. We really need energy addition. We need every form of energy input we can into the grid to power demand, because energy abundance is key to, again, prosperity and human flourishing. And I don't know about you, I do know about you, but I think we're both on the team of, human flourishing.
Yeah. Well, and I mentioned in the opening question about the coal mines that China's launching every week this year. They're slated to start a new coal mine and put it online. Why are they using coal? Why do they do that? Does it supply them an advantage in the electrical generation that they're looking for to be in this AI arms race?
Well, the answer lies with being a student of history and just looking at how the United States built our energy systems. We built our society on the back of coal, and then we continued to build our society on the back of fossil fuels. And the reason for that is that the least expensive form of energy is always the best form of energy used because it leads to the greatest growth in society. Right. And so, China is using coal because it has a lot of coal and it's the least expensive. And so they're building their society on the back of that. Let's not forget that in the world today, we still have 4 billion energy-starved people that consume less energy in a year than our refrigerators do in their entire households. And so they too are going to build their societies, on the back of coal. And it would really be black-hearted for us to tell them, no, you shouldn't do what we did.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Kevin McCullough.
All right, friends, welcome back. All summer, you heard me talking about oilfacts.com. Oilfacts.com is where you go to become part of Team Human Flourishing. Now, you may think, what does human flourishing and fossil fuels have to do with each other? Didn't AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, didn't she tell me that I'm a bad person if I drive a car that requires gasoline? Yeah, she did. Well, why did she do that? Well, we've been discussing this over the last hour, and Ed Kolik's back with us from Prairie Operating Company. I'm sorry, you guys changed your name on me between last year's campaign and this year's campaign, and it just doesn't quite pull off as easily anymore. But I'm doing my best. But it is true, Ed, that there's been. We talked about the manipulation of electricity itself, but there's been a manipulation of the marketing in the messaging of what energy is and why it's important. And those of us that have just not gone along with the Green New Deal in every way that it was put out there, were told that we were ending the Earth's supply of energy, that we are the bad people because we are using energy in a way that is inconsistent with helping people. And the truth is, we want everyone to have the same access to clean and abundant energy as we have. So how do these two viewpoints get balanced? Where do we say this is true and this isn't true from your perspective?
Well, let's break down the facts first and foremost. The campaign against fossil fuels started as something called global warming. When the proponents of that campaign realized we weren't actually going through a period of global warming, they called it climate change and extreme weather. And so now it's the Green New Deal. And so their marketing is like any propagandist, kind of adapting with changing facts. But the reality and the sad reality here is that, people have been led to be convinced that their moral duty is to, end the use of fossil fuels to stop the slow of climate change. And that's an absolutely absurdist thing to buy into for a number of reasons. Number one, climate change is constant. If climate wasn't changing, that would be odd, since over the entire course of history of this planet, climate has changed. Number two, there is no proof that fossil fuels are in any way correlated to climate change. And even more importantly, there's no proof that CO2 is any way correlated to global warming. if you look back at the geologic history of our planet, over hundreds of millions of years, you see periods of much higher CO2 levels that are not at all correlated to temperature. So, that's just false science that's been put forward. What we're really living through is sort of a tropicalization era of the planet that's correlated with higher CO2, which in many ways benefits society. It's kind of a greening of the planet where we're seeing more productivity out of farming, which is good for humanity because we're able to grow more food. But the real black-hearted nature of this propaganda saddens me because I believe in the human spirit and our desire to do good. And so that spirit and that innate human nature and desire to do good is being turned upon itself by trying to convince people that they should actually do bad upon themselves by creating scarcity in energy, by cutting the use of fossil fuels, which, again, we are all completely dependent on in order to live our lives. And so they would have you believe that by creating scarcity in this thing that fuels our very lives, we're going to do ourselves good when we know well enough that all that's going to do is lead to starvation and death.
Well, and to that end, I've traveled enough to the third world, multiple trips to Haiti, multiple trips to the African continent, to other deeply impoverished places in the Caribbean, and some in old Eastern Europe and so forth, that all you have to do is open your eyes to see the difference. And you talked about how some of these places use less energy in the course of a year than our refrigerator. And when you think of what we have, I'm in a studio that has air conditioning in it. In a few months, it'll have heat on it when I'm doing my show, and I need to stay warm. There are places that still don't have even those simple luxuries, much less the refrigeration of food and some of the other stuff. So, last question, and it's an important one. Some of the climate freakazoids want to make you believe that we are using up all of the planet's resources and there's not going to be anything there for generations to come.
To go find a new conventional oil discovery, you really have to rely on the super majors and government-sponsored companies to go spend tens of billions of dollars exploratory drilling in places like, the Arctic and offshore, to find these things. And once they find them, they then have to spend a decade and, billions and billions of dollars developing them. And so that whole form of energy supply has been grossly underinvested in the last 10 to 20 years because there's been this false propaganda that, guess what, we don't need any more fossil fuels because we're all going to be able to just rely on electricity that's going to magically generate itself. So let's underinvest in all those things we really need. And it's been further kind of bolstered by ESG and, the idea that capital markets should underfund the fossil fuel industry for that reason. But, the result of all that is undersupply of energy that we really need.
Which is why American producers like Prairie Operating Company out there doing a great job for the American consumer. Ed, it's been an honor to have you on the show. Thank you for going into such detail with us. We really appreciate it. I hope we help people. Thanks for being here today.
It's great to be with you, Kevin, as always.
You got it. Kevin McCullough coming right back from New York. Stay here.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin.
Donald, your big beautiful bill is anti-American. I mean, for Christ's sake, you cut funding for food stamps and made it illegal to use them to buy junk foods. I'll have you know, fat poor people is an American staple. Besides, without food stamps, how is someone like Tammy, a 500-pound white woman with 16 kids, supposed to feed her family?
Well, Pocahontas, Tubby Tammy should probably lose weight and get a job.
As someone who's 1/1000th morbidly obese, I find that insensitive.
Elizabeth, Donald is never going to listen to us. We have to find a way to convince him making Jelly Bellies work for food is anti-American. Do you know Zoran Mamdani?
You mean the communist Indian guy who's running for mayor of New York?
Well, he's not a communist, but he is black.
Right, of course. I forgot he lived in Uganda for 5 years. It's like when I went to Maui for 2 weeks and became 1/1000th Hawaiian.
Well, no one understands traditional American values like Zoran Mamdani. Plus, he's black, so I'm thinking if we get him to give a speech, he may inspire 1 million black people to march against this bill.
So you want me to give a speech stating that the bill is anti-American?
We think your expertise on American values will convince minorities to march against this unconstitutional bill.
There's only one problem that I'm seeing. For some reason, nobody believes that I'm a black man, and some people are suspicious that I'm a communist. I came up with a demonstration that's sure to convince everyone. I will simultaneously listen to the national anthem and get upset about these food stereotypes of black people. You think just because I'm a black man that I have to eat watermelon and fried chicken? So what do you think? I'm saying this as someone who's 1/1000th capitalist. Wow.
2, 3, somewhere in the bowels of the city that never sleeps,
Kevin McCullough, radio host with Salem Media,
is a man also not sleeping.
Syndicated radio talk show host Kevin McCullough.
And that guy would like a word with you.
Many of you know him as Votes.
Of course that Kevin show is going to be great. The only thing that could be greater, of course, would be that Donald show. We don't have that, so we have that Kevin show.
Featuring the music of Dick Tunney and the Dream in Color Orchestra. Still to come, Danielle Alvarez of the RNC with an inside scoop on the looming elections of 2025, Virginia and New Jersey. Andrew and Jae Huff bringing comedy the whole family can enjoy. Sketch comedy today from Al Berry and Nick Peterson. And Mercy Me, returning to the spotlight. And now from Times Square, where under a future Mayor Zoran Mamdani, reality takes a backseat to radicalism and absurd, the new normal. Here's Kevin!
For a Simon Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough. Judge Arthur Engoron, the man who fined Trump $500 million for allegedly exaggerating real estate values, has now had the book literally thrown at him. Actually, multiple books. Apparently frustrated, readers in his courtroom decided the only way to respond to Engoron's 800-page rulings was to treat them like dodgeballs. The judge is fined, but he's reportedly filing a restraining order against hardcover editions of Tom Clancy novels. Meanwhile, the Democratic Party has found a new enemy, Cracker Barrel. Yes, the Tennessee-based restaurant chain changed its logo, and suddenly Gavin Newsom and his pals are treating it like a hate crime. Apparently, nothing unites progressives like the fear that America might enjoy chicken fried steak without government supervision. In Washington, a business owner is upset because Trump's federal crime crackdown, which has removed fentanyl, gangs, weapons from the streets of D.C., is hurting his profits. You heard it right. The city's finally safe, but apparently he's mad because fewer criminals are shopping in his store. If only Jesse James were still robbing trains, the guy could have made a fortune selling him discount ski masks. On foreign policy, Trump pulled off a stunning diplomatic win this week by brokering a pact between Azerbaijan and Armenia, a deal that also delivered a punch to Iran. Biden once promised to restore America's standing in the world. Trump, on the other hand, is restoring Armenia's ability to stand and delivering a left hook to Tehran. On the domestic comedy circuit, Kamala Harris is on a nationwide tour to promote a book, except the audiences think it's a comedy routine. Who knew that explaining Venn diagrams could be a headliner act? One audience member said, "I laughed, I cried, I finally understood why I'll never vote for." Not to be outdone, a rock star who nobody's listened to since the Reagan era had a meltdown after the White House called him washed up. In response, he screamed that Trump is a low-life fascist. Translation, Spotify won't play his music, so he's going to audition for CNN. In federal court in Florida, a judge has blocked Trump from expanding Alligator Alcatraz immigration detention facility. Progressives say the facility is cruel because detainees can see actual alligators outside. Conservatives say it's a feature, not a bug. Elsewhere, a Pennsylvania city just scrapped its immigrant protection sanctuary status after realizing that the Trump deportation order means deportations. At the Supreme Court, Trump scored another victory this week. The NIH medical grants for DEI and LGBTQ studies are being slashed. Activists say this will set back progressives. Conservatives say it'll finally give cancer a chance at the wheel. And finally, AI tools might weaken doctors' ability to detect colon cancer, but don't worry, the upside is they'll be better at detecting pronouns. For a Simon Desk Weekend, I'm Kevin McCullough.
First thing I want to get off my chest, and don't get all offended.
Oh, I am prepared to be offended.
No, I just feel uncomfortable calling you father, you know?
That's fine. You don't have to call me anything.
Is there something else similar you prefer I call you? I mean, I don't want to call you like daddy or anything. But
What? This ain't Brokeback Monastery.
yeah. Hey, how much are you saving on the AC bill? Gosh. You know, you could make it even harder to breathe in here if you built these wooden boxes a little smaller.
I think you have me confused with the complaint department.
Consider it in-person feedback. You don't strike me as a place that reads your Google reviews.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add to make this more miserable than it already is?
What flavor are these crackers?
Crackers?
Yeah, a bowl of crackers out there on the table.
Those are communion wafers.
They're bland, like foam board.
Yes, well, they're not meant to be a snack.
You know, you guys should really partner with Nabisco. Call them Trinity Triscuits.
I will send that message up the papal ladder. Why are you here? Do you actually have confessions to make here, or?
Not really. You know, I've never really believed that we need a human mediator, like a priest, to confess.
Neat. I appreciate you stopping by. This has been magical.
No, you know what I mean, but this feels more like theological therapy.
Well, I'm not a therapist, although I'm willing to bet your problem is one that's hard to pronounce.
Yeah, well, that's why they shortened it to IBS.
Not what I was referring to, but it does smell like a donkey farm in here, and my life mission is apparently a complete waste of time.
Oh, you're so dramatic. Fine. You really want to know all my ethically questionable qualities?
Am I going to be involved in anything?
I won't think twice about spending $50 on a Stanley Cup. But when I'm at the register, I always choose no for rounding up to charity. I create new emails just to get first order discounts online. I started a food blog just to write off all my groceries.
Dang, that's pretty smart.
Speaking of groceries, I don't always put my cart back.
That should also be prison time.
I bought pants, wore them to an event, and returned them the next day. I have a lot of shopping.
All right. Are you finished?
Yes. No. Sometimes when I'm driving, I think about what it'd be like to boop the cyclist right off the road. I'm not going to do it, but I think about it.
Oh, well, I'm gonna pretend I didn't hear that one.
Which one? The pants one?
Yeah, no, not that one. Sounds like you have some time on your hands. You know, you should come out to the soup kitchen.
And it's free?
Well, yeah, it is. But we're looking for help to feed the poor.
Oh, okay. Now, do you serve the crackers?
Sure. We serve everybody.
No, I mean the crackers.
Oh.
Put in the soup.
I'm sure we can manage. Does your availability hinge on our saltine inventory?
No, please stop eating those.
Well,
they'd slide down easier if you weren't buying your juice cups from the Indian in the cupboard. You make these boxes small so the parents can't come in.
I just got back, and you're not going to believe what happened.
First day. Are you nervous? I'm a little bit nervous. Welcome to Stratmeyer High. Oh no.
I don't even know where to start. I know what you're thinking. Can't be all that bad, Dot, when you've got at least one friend from middle school in a class.
Well, if it isn't Dot Connor-Webtective. She uses the internet to solve mysteries.
There was no way my day was gonna go well.
No, stop, no!
And it doesn't help that there's, well, the other problem.
No one knows where you are. No one is coming to save you.
I feel a mystery coming on.
Hey, Dot, I think you got an unread message.
It's from my dad.
What is a web detective, and why did you send it to McFarlane Park?
It's geocaching. We go to a location and are given the next clue.
Can I see that?
I don't think it's that precise.
All right, Mr. Know-It-All, tell us where the list is. Oh, so.
Hulu! I made it! Just like Mom said.
So what do we do now?
We'll have to go tomorrow.
Dot Connor skipped school.
What is going on?
No, it feels like your life is out of control, but it's okay because God knows all about it.
We gotta go now.
Dot! Don't forget your case notes.
Ready or not, we'll be right back. That Kevin. Now, back to That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's Kevin McCullough. Glad to have you with us at That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com for everything that you need in relationship to the show. Podcast, TV show, copies, everything you want, you can find it there. My next guest is stepping into the shoes that have been previously held by people who went on to be press secretaries in the White House. Sean Spicer and Kayleigh McEnany were both the RNC comms chair before they stepped into that role. And Danielle Alvarez is now fulfilling that obligation for the Republican National Committee. And she joins us for her debut appearance. Hello, Danielle. Good to have you.
It is wonderful to be with you. Thanks for having me.
There's a lot going on. A lot of people think that the real work isn't until 2026, but even in 2025, you've got a governor's race in Virginia where you have the Democrat, basically the supporters of the Democrat there holding up signs over the weekend saying, if trans aren't allowed in your locker room, Winsome Sears, then you're not allowed to drink from my drinking fountain. Of course, Winsome Sears is an African-American woman, and that's a reference back to segregation. And the Democratic supporters of the Democratic nominee are openly supporting it, Danielle. It's like the Democrats don't even realize that they're blatant racists.
Isn't that absolutely crazy? First of all, you're exactly right. Elections and election cycles have changed. You know, we now campaign year round. The reality is that politics affects our everyday lives. Not only are the midterms coming up in 2026, where we need to ensure that President Trump gets 4 full years of his administration to turn our nation around following Joe Biden's failures. But we have critical governor's races. Winsome Sears in Virginia, Jack Ciattarelli in New Jersey. We have very important and critical elections. Virginia is a state we have to hold. It's tough, you know, every year it is an uphill battle, but Virginia comes together and Republicans have come together last time around to elect Glenn Youngkin, hopefully this time around to corral behind Winsome Sears. She's an incredible candidate. You just pointed out such a disgusting rhetoric, such a disgusting display from Democrats. They don't even realize how lost they are. They keep doubling down on their failed policies. And I think that that's why Republicans have a chance. I encourage everyone to check out Winsome Sears, to go to her website, to donate, to volunteer, because that is how we will be successful in these 2025 elections.
Yeah. Let's talk about the New Jersey race, because that's much closer to home for me here in the tri-state. You've got President Trump in 2024 closing the gap on the Democratic kind of mismatch that is usually held in New Jersey. He lost by 16 points in the previous cycle, and in this cycle, barely losing by 4 or 5 points. And he's endorsed Ciattarelli, and Ciattarelli, from what I am observing in terms of how he's working the state, he's out every day, sun up to sundown, shaking hands, making appearances, and talking to New Jersey taxpayers about why the Democrats and Mikey Sherrill, his opponent, wanting to do things like tax the amount of rainwater that falls on their property in a given year. I mean, you think you've heard every single way that Democrats can tax and take money from the working people of this country. They're still trying to come up with it, and they're even using God's divine blessing of water pouring upon us to do so.
Democrats have not found a dollar that they don't want to tax and a dollar that they don't want to spend. And that is why we need to make sure to get out there and support Jack Ciattarelli for governor in New Jersey. One of the interesting things that I experienced, I served as a senior advisor on the communications team for the president's successful 2024 campaign. I was on the ground in New Jersey with him for that incredible rally. I remember flying over the rally, doing a barrel roll on Trump Force One. And I remember New Jersey showing up in excitement for President Trump. You said that exactly right. He was able to close the gap in New Jersey. We know that we have the momentum. Again, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be an uphill battle. But I encourage everyone watching to go and check out Jack Ciattarelli and get involved. The other issue that we are seeing when it comes to New Jersey is because of candidates like Zohan Mamdani, New Yorkers are fleeing New York City. Well, make sure, New Yorkers, if you are fleeing New York City, that you are not taking those same failed politics to other states like New Jersey. Remember why you are leaving the disaster that is crime-ridden, high-tax New York City because of candidates, socialist candidates like Zohan Mamdani. So give Jack Ciattarelli and the Republican candidates a chance. Let's make sure to clean up our country in 2025 and in 2026.
Let's talk something related to elections that the president kind of got some raised eyebrows about last week. He said, let's go back to paper ballots everywhere. Let's get rid of the voting machines. Let's make these elections reliable, dependable, trackable, accountable, all those types of things. And yet, of course, the opponents on the other side saying, no, we have to keep all the machines everywhere.
It is really common sense. The president has been talking about this for years.
And we're the only country, by the way, that's still doing it that way. Like everybody else has gone back to paper ballots.
I remember when I worked on the president's 2020 campaign, he had a tweet that is burned into my mind. We need to make sure elections are safe, secure, tried, and true. And so whatever the rules are, the RNC is going to play by those rules. The one thing that the president has asked the RNC to do, first under Chairman Michael Whatley, who just stepped down at the president's request with the president's full and total endorsement to run for U.S. Senate in North Carolina. Joe Gruters is now the chairman of the RNC, and he is going to take up that helm and make sure to protect the vote. That is the task of the RNC, whatever the method is, that we are able to cast ballots. Our job at the direction of President Trump is to make sure to protect the vote. Now, of course, it would be easier to have same-day elections. And of course, it would be easier to use paper ballots. It might not be possible to get that done, certainly in states where we have Democrat control of legislatures. But let's compare those Democrat states where we see those failures with states like Florida, which, by the way, my home state used to be the laughing stock after hanging Chads in 2000. The way they've cleaned it up. We now release election results and information, ballots coming in, and ballot totals about an hour after election polls close. We need to make sure that that type of transparency is happening across the country. We know that about 3/4 of Americans support the president in this endeavor, and the RNC stands beside him.
I've never understood how or why, if all the counties begin tabulating their votes as soon as the polls close, why they can't have it done in the same amount of time Florida does. It doesn't seem reasonable to say that states much smaller than Florida have to go all night long and into the next morning and, we didn't find this box of ballots or that one over there. And it defies a little bit of credulity. We're talking with Danielle Alvarez, who is the RNC spokeswoman, who is doing a great job on an off year. This is a year that a lot of people say, I don't know if I'm going to be all that involved in the elections. Friends, you have to be. Kevin McCullough, glad to have you with us from Times Square. Welcome back to Times Square, and on this spectacular weekend, thank you for being here and for spending part of your time with us. I never take it for granted. And it's kind of like this contest that we're running right now across the Salem network. I would like to say thank you to you for all of the wonderful things that you've done for me. And you could win a chance to come to New York on my dime and see the city and come see the show and maybe even have dinner with me. We would love to make this possible. If you go to thatkevinshow.com or if you go to thatpassportlife.com, you'll see a way that you can enter and vote for me. You'll see this little thing that says win an experience with your favorite talker, and I would be very grateful for your votes regardless. If you've not signed up yet for the newsletter, by the way, you can do that as well at thatkevinshow.com. And on the contest, you can enter every single day up through August 17th. On August 17th, we cut it all off, and then we draw the name, and you could potentially win a 3-night stay, airfare included, and a $500 Visa card by just entering the Talkers contest. So I would be deeply grateful if you would do that, and very, very much unexpected in terms of the graciousness that you always pour out. But I do want to say thank you for one other thing. We have now, because of your steadiness and faithfulness, we have now crossed the 51 slave liberation mark in our drive towards 208 slaves to be liberated this year. And this is especially important, and not for me and not for you. It's especially important for the women that we are rescuing from these heinous circumstances where they have been stripped of all dignity and all privacy and all of the many other things that you cherish when you have a life that you get to live under your own determination. But these women lost that right a long time ago. And your gift of $250 not only sets them free, more importantly, it gives them everything they need to return to their life and to start over again through our friends at Christian Solidarity International. That $250, it's supplying food for a year, it's supplying grain for another year beyond that, it's supplying utensils for them to cook, clean, and fish with, it's supplying a little she-goat that she can use to harvest milk and cheese, and then also breed so that she can have a little source of micro-enterprise. And I'd be so grateful if you dial 888-342-1010, 888-342-1010, and join us.
My name is Nanya Newt. I was about 15 years old when I was captured. My mom had spent the last few days teaching me all about what it meant to be a good wife and a mom, showing me how to cook and sew. She had hoped I would get married in the future. One day I was out collecting firewood, and that was when the Arabs found me and captured me and took me to Sudan without the chance to tell my family goodbye. It took me many days to walk the complete journey. They gave us boiled sorghum as we went, and the men that had been captured with us faced grave dangers. They were considered to be spies, and most of them were killed right in front of us. Upon arrival in the north, I was sold to a master in Miriam village, and then I was sold almost as quickly to another Arab in Magalagate. He made me work for his family, sweeping the compound and washing the dishes. They worked me long and terrible hours, pounding sorghum, fetching water. And then they said, in order to be a good Muslim woman, I would need to be circumcised. I was held down as it happened, and then I was forced to marry. Against my will, they forced me to work even when I was sick. And if I did anything that made them angry, they would beat me. My master never bought me any clothes, never paid me for any of my work, and barely ever fed me. Then one day, I heard about a CSI retriever, and I ran to find them in the town. As it turned out, they were freeing slaves in my region, and they had not known about me. But I think God allowed me to find them because they brought me home. We walked that same journey back to South Sudan. And today I thank God because I am free. I thank the Arab retriever because he helped. I thank CSI and for those who gave. I cannot thank those of you who gave money to help us become free. Ever enough in all of my life. But I do hope that my prayer is answered, that we will not stop until they are all free.
Stick around for more of That Kevin. Next, That Kevin Show with Kevin McCullough. Here he is from New York. That Kevin McCullough.
Welcome back to Times Square. It's That Kevin Show, thatkevinshow.com. Glad to have you with us. And you know, one of the things we like to champion and let you know about when there's new information, especially that's advantageous for your family, is those new developments in the way of entertainment that are safe and good for your kids and also have incredible values attached to them. And I am not personally deeply familiar with Dot Connor-Webtective. I think I'm a little bit out of the age range of who it's targeted to, but your kids might be. And there's something very exciting coming to the big screen that we want to talk about. Andrew and Jae Huff are now joining me with the exclusive look. Guys, it's great to have you. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks so much for having us on.
Yeah.
This is awesome.
Webtective, it seems to be a very snazzy term, and if kids are familiar with it, they know who Dot Connor is. But for a lot of us that may not be clued in, you see what I did there? Walk us through the mysterious case.
Yeah, well, so Dot Connor is kind of just a normal preteen girl in sort of modern world, which the modern world is very much online. But she's inspired by old school detective stories and everything that her family has enjoyed through their entertainment, like Nancy Drew books and that kind of thing. And so she...
Hey, who didn't grow up reading the Hardy Boys and losing themselves in the imagination of where they went on their adventures?
Yeah, exactly. And so she combines this love of detective stories with kind of an online persona. And that's, so she takes web, and detective and like smashes them together to kind of be this detective who solves mysteries using the internet. And so that's kind of her character, and the mysteries she solves are mysteries of life. So not crime, not
no cold cases.
Yeah.
No cold case in the backyard.
Yeah. But mysteries of life, like if she's struggling in school or something like that. Why?
What was it about the landscape of kids' entertainment that inspired you guys to create Dot? Because there's always a story behind how these characters come about.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It really kind of, for us, we're parents and we have 4 kids. And I'll be honest with you, it sort of started back in 2020, a little bit prior to that, because I think in a lot of ways, the veil was lifted on entertainment in general of there being a darker agenda behind children's entertainment. And we just kept being sort of surprised by what was being put into the entertainment that was targeted at our children. And it was very in your face to us. To the degree that we thought, man, we just want something that's wholesome, that we don't have to worry about our kids watching because it has the right values in it. And we just found that to be really, really difficult to find as a family. And that's what sort of prompted us to go, hey, let's do something about that. Let's at least try to, push against that.
Yeah.
Well, kudos on doing so, because so many times I think there's a temptation to kind of grimace and complain about what is out there, but to step into it and to own it and to say I'm going to do something about it is a much more ambitious way to respond, and we need more people doing it. I think that we need far more creative content being produced for the public to satisfy themselves, because there is going to be forever and a day, especially if I'm a Bible believing Christian, I believe that there's a sin nature that exists, and that there's, there is evil in the world, and we have to acknowledge that. But we need to combat that with equal amounts of light and truth. This has been a series that has been on a number of networks and other places, but it's coming. You're bringing the story to the big screen. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. Well, so we've always wanted to do a season 2, and we developed it on a lot of different streaming platforms, and we were having a little bit of trouble trying to find funding to do the season 2. And then it really became just a strategic decision, because in 2023, with the strikes and the things that were happening in Hollywood, we saw the impact that would actually have in 2025's theatrical releases, right? And we've seen that. We're bringing in a lot of old movies, or just a lot of more indie, or ones that have been sitting on people's, movie shelves for years.
Right.
They've gone and released, in 2025, because there hasn't been a lot of content. And so we were like, we couldn't make the season 2, and we were like, let's go ahead and make it a movie. Let's not only fulfill, it was such a multi-tiered reason. Let's make a show that families can go and enjoy together, that has clean content. Let's make a continuation of where we left off in this cliffhanger of the series. It's already developed IP. People are aware of it. And this is obviously a great time to be releasing your indie movie, because there isn't a ton of competition out there.
And I would add, the series was distributed pretty widely in Christian streaming platforms, but we felt like this was a property that, even, to be honest with you, even non-religious families are seeing the value of Christian values. And so wanted to even broaden the audience as much as we could, to try to get the things that we value and believe in front of a wider audience, because that's how we believe culture changes.
Well, again, I'm a huge fan of anything that moves in this direction, and I think you two are to be commended on this. Talk to me about when the release happens and how people can go see it, and what do they need to do?
Yeah, so the movie's coming out in limited release theatrically on September 19th. Now, this is kind of, funny enough, this is kind of the old school way of releasing a movie, which is release it in a few markets initially and see if it's successful and can find an audience, and then expand from there. With independent film today, and that was our light going out. With independent film today, it's really, really important and vital that audiences kind of respond right away rather than wait, because what ends up happening more often than not is a film might not have a big opening weekend, and then what that ends up doing is causing the theaters to kind of pull back on the showings. So for us, if families are really wanting more of this type of stuff, which we're a family that wants, we totally agree with you of like more creative people should do this. It's super important if families enjoy what they're seeing to go invite others, support it right away. But so, all
right, September 19th. And where do they go online?
DotConnor.com.
DotConnor.com for Webtective. DotConnor.com, and get your tickets for the September 19th debut.